So now we're at the last step in the process, data submission. Now, turning in the data might not sound that fun or that glamorous, but I think of it this way. If it weren't for you taking the time to send us the data, the rest of the time and effort that's already been invested in the project would be much less valuable. So we think of you as our data superheroes. So I'm going to walk you through the process of submitting data as much as possible, but because everybody has a different computer and a different email setup and different camera setups, I can't cover all of the possibilities in one video. I can definitely help troubleshoot by email if you'd like to know how to do something specific with your system, but I don't have experience with every single email application, so just sort of, I guess, be patient with us as we try to sort of work out the kinks and make it easy for you. So data are actually submitted to us twice. First in electronic format each month after you survey, and then at the end of the season, after you've completed and validated all of your surveys, the data sheets themselves, the hard copies, get mailed to Crab Team to our office in Seattle for archiving. Even though your data sheets are submitted at the end of the season, the monthly data submission electronically is a critical step, and it's actually almost more important than the archiving step. So this is how we keep abreast with what's going on in the field. We review your data sheets each month, we compare them to the trap photos, and we can help you troubleshoot challenges and points of confusion from month to month. So we might come back at you with questions, and we try to do that quickly so you might remember the answer to something you saw in the field. The electronic submissions are actually also what's entered into our database, so we need to be able to read them, and there's a couple of things I'll point out about that process. So before you start the data submission process, double check that all of the information on the data sheets is complete. So don't forget to check that the site data and the volunteer timesheets are complete, including the first and last names of volunteers. I'm not always the person doing the actual data entry, so somebody who's doing this might not know who you are and know who's assigned to each site. Don't submit your data until you have resolved any questions about species ID, and double check that the total columns on the molt and trapping data sheets are actually complete. You can either use a scanner or your phone to get an image, an electronic image of the data sheet. Your phone will typically work totally fine, but sometimes a scanned version can result in a smaller file size and actually be more readable. There are some apps that you can download for free on your phone that will take a photograph and turn it into a PDF. So I've highlighted one here that's called Scanner for me. It is free. It does have a lot of advertisements, and I find it a little bit clunky. There might be better ones, but that is one that is free and does work for this purpose. So if you're ever having trouble getting readable images from photographs, this might be a direction that you want to go. One additional important double check is to open all of the images on your desktop computer before you send them. Often, if you look at the picture on your phone, it's really actually hard to see whether or not it's readable, and you might sort of miss some of the details if it's in a small format. So open the images of the data sheets to make sure that everything is readable at the resolution that you've downloaded it, and that nothing is cut off. None of the edges of the data sheet are cut off in the images. Now, if you transfer files, images either of the traps or of the data sheets to your phone, you typically often do this by emailing from your phone to your desktop. You typically do this by emailing yourself. If you do this, be careful not to downsize the image file too much. So, for instance, if you have an iPhone and you go to email a photograph of a screen, a photograph of a data sheet, a screen like this will pop up and ask you, do you want to submit or email the data as a small file? It sounds tempting so that the file size goes more quickly and doesn't use as much data. However, it does that by reducing the resolution of the photograph. And so if you go through this step, we request that you actually choose large or actual size, because that tends to be the file size that's big enough for us to identify the critters and to read the data sheet legibly. So next, rename all of the file images according to this framework. This is again a point where you typically have to put the files onto your desktop computer to do this. iPhones and iPads make it very difficult, if not impossible, to change the name of the file from your iPad or iPhone. So you typically have to do this, download them or email them to your desktop in order to be able to change the file name. So the general convention is the site number is first, and then the year of the data collection, the month of the data collection, and the type of image content. The file extension is automatic. It doesn't matter what type of image file you send us. It might be a JPEG or a bitmap or a TIFF, etc. All of those are fine. You don't have to add it. Your computer will automatically add it. All of these bits of the file name should be separated by periods. The reason that we ask you to do this is that we will get hundreds and thousands of photos over the course of the season, and this is how we keep them separated so that our database can find and labeled so that the database can find and identify the correct corresponding photos for each month of data. So in all, you will send at least 9 photos. At least 3, one for each of the data sheets, and actually there will be a 4th one if you use the back of the trapping data sheet as well. And then 6 bin photos, remembering to submit all of the images of the empty bins as well. Those image files are then submitted via email to Crab Team, the Crab Team email address. So that's crabteam@uw.edu. Please send it to that rather than the program coordinator's email address, because if I'm out on vacation, no one will look at your data until I get back. We ask that you do this within 1 week of sampling because that gives us time to review your submission, and if we have questions to clarify things, we need to get back to you while you still actually might remember the answer to that question and before you get into the field next time, so that we can make sure that any sort of questions don't continue month to month and we only find out about them at the end of the season. If you need to get any help with species identification, remember we ask that you do that before you submit your final data sheet. So if that's the case and you're waiting to hear back from us on what a species is, this 1 week sort of guideline might not actually work, and that's on us. That's okay. That's our fault. So don't stress much about it. But ideally, quick turnaround is important to us to be able to QC the data before you get out in the field next month. Now, if your email limits file size of attachments, you can send the files across more than one email, or you can use a file sharing website like Google Drive or Dropbox. We've used all of those with great success in the past. Hang on to your hard copies until the end of the season, and that's when you'll mail them to us all at once in this pre-addressed envelope that we gave you at the beginning of the season with all of your blank data sheets. So you can put them in the mail after your last month of data is approved. That is, if we have any corrections or clarifications on the data sheet, please make those to the data sheet before sticking the data sheets in the mail to us. And if you ever forget the address, or lose the envelope that the data sheets need to be mailed to, that's on the Crab Team website and in the footer for the Crab Team emails. So that's all that there is to Crab Team data submission. It's actually a fairly straightforward process once you get in the rhythm of it. But if you have any questions, do feel free to give me a holler.